So we are coming to you live from Necker Island.
Yes.
Where we have been here for the week. And my friend Dan Mangena and I were talking one evening, and he said something so brilliant. I had to actually bring him on this solo episode with me. Technically solo episode. This is my friend Dan. Say a word about who you are.
Hi, I'm Dan Mangena from the UK, live primarily in Cabo, Mexico, where we are neighbours.
Yes.
And I'm really passionate about empowering people to live a more abundant, joyful, purpose-driven life.
Isn't that awesome? So he's been on the show before talking about the alchemy of abundance. So if you haven't seen that episode, I recommend you go back and find it. It happened last year, and it was a really great one. But today we're here to talk about the 4 questions he asks himself when he's dating someone. So say a word about how that came about.
Yeah. So I've been primarily non-monogamous in my life. I've just found that that's just worked for me. I've had very successful monogamous relationships also. But after transitioning the dynamic of the relationship with my son's mother into co-parenting and loving friendships, I've kind of been going out and looking at the dating world, and I was kind of questioning, what do I want to create? What do I want? Because there needs to be a level of intentionality to create something clear, right? And as I've been going through this whole situation, I stepped back and started looking at, well, what is it that's called me into different relationships over my life? What's called me into different relationship dynamics? What has pulled me to be in certain relationships with women that I've been with? And I was able to distill it to a list of qualities and things that I was looking for. Yeah. And as I analyzed and broke those down, really it came down to the 4 questions I now ask myself, which I think sometimes we can overcomplicate it, right? We can make life complicated, more complicated than it needs to be. And instead of us having the clarity that allows us to move in a particular direction, we end up looped.
Yes.
And so I was kind of borderline writing myself off being on anything monogamous because I didn't have that clarity and intentionality.
Yeah.
And what these 4 questions did was give me a very, very solid baseline upon which I can consider whether a monogamous relationship with someone's going to be the thing. Maybe like a deep, loving, long-term, forever person is going to be the thing.
Yep.
But I also, as I said to you, I use it for anyone that comes into my life now. Yeah. These 4 questions have to be answered affirmatively in order for me to be interested in moving something forward.
So when you say anyone who comes into your life, this is team members or you mean
romantically.
Okay.
Romantically. And this isn't just whether I'm going to go on a date with someone, as if I'm really going to consider even pursuing conversation with someone further beyond. I've got these 4 questions now as the baseline that have to be affirmatively answered, because if it's not a yes to all these questions, then there's going to be a deadline on it. And at the moment, and especially having a small son, it's like I don't really want to give energy that could be going into my purpose, it could be going into my family, away to something that's definitely not going anywhere. For what?
Right, and it's really about the judicious use of your time, as I hear it, and also your energy.
Yeah, 100%.
And really keeping yourself on purpose. So your work is so much about abundance and about creating a life that's rooted in abundance. And so how do these 4 questions relate to abundant relationships, say?
So for me, abundance is having all of your needs met with overflow.
Yeah, I love that.
So the clarity that these questions gave me is, now I can be really intentional and deliberate in what I'm creating abundantly in a relationship, the overflow of what my needs are. And so often, because we haven't taken the time actually to look at what our needs are, we can't step into something where our needs are met, let alone where they're met abundantly.
Right, and then we're trying to twist the other person into the version of person that we wish they were or that we think we need, or et cetera, instead of answering these questions up front. It's kind of almost a triage thing. Like you can triage really quickly, like, is this person someone I can take into a more deep connection that I want to go further with, or where is this person situated?
And where this person's situated is important as well, because, not everyone's necessarily going to be looking for their forever person.
Right.
Right? Someone might be interested in only having casual, consensually casual fun with people, and that's okay if that's what you're into.
Yeah.
Me personally, with my time right now, I'm kind of like, there has to be something that we're both getting from it.
Yeah. And that it sounds like that you're moving toward also.
Yeah, I want to be moving towards. I mean, at the end of the day, my philosophy is a bit extreme with things. It's, if all that someone can offer me is something carnal, I can go and buy that.
Exactly.
Basically, right?
Yeah.
And even if I don't want to go and pay for sex, for example, or pay for physical connection with someone, I can always self-love. So that if that's all that you have to offer me, and that's all that it has to offer, I mean, if you look at, I can get you pregnant, I can get some kind of STD, no matter how careful you want to be.
Right.
So do I really want to run that risk for something that, and again, there's no judgment on anyone who is interested in that. I just tend not to even really be able to have anything fulfilling intimately without some kind of connection. Yeah. It doesn't mean I have to know someone for 10 years. Yeah. A deep connection could be built in an hour. It could be built in 10 minutes. But that has to be there. But ultimately what I've seen is in the spaces in my life, when I've been in a relationship where that bond has been there for me to be able to build, even if it's a friendship that exists after us. I've got plenty of people that I've dated or been with over my life that I'm amazing friends with now.
Yes.
In fact, one of them was, I was talking to one of them, someone I dated like a decade ago earlier today, and she was laughing because some pictures from when we dated popped up on her phone. She's like, oh my God, look at it. And there's nothing going on there. Yeah. We don't have any kind of, we've been around each other for many years now with nothing of that nature. Yeah. I'm a dad, she's a mum, we've gone our separate ways. So this isn't about, oh, you're just trying to get in each other's pants again. No. Right. We've got that, we had a basis, and this is another example of another relationship I've been in that gave me the basis of things that need to be in the mix in order for me to have a fulfilling connection with someone, regardless of whether that remains romantic or migrates into something.
Or transitions into a friendship or whatever it does. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I wanted him to share about these 4 questions is I love having the male perspective here of someone who's aligned with his values, who moves with his values through the world, and it applies to any gender of relationship, any person, it's really
any sexual orientation.
It's about values and relationships and intentionality. So what are your 4 questions?
Okay, I'm going to deal with the more controversial shadow side one first. Excellent. Because there's a big kind of movement going on with men now, this whole alpha male thing and being a real man. And I consider myself more of a sigma male, but there's a lot of concepts and ideas about what men want and what men need and what men are going for. Yeah. And I don't always agree with them, but there's one that I heard that I was like, oh my God, that's true. And it's a very controversial character that I actually heard say this, a chap called Andrew Tate, where there's a lot of stuff around Andrew Tate at the moment. Yeah. I find him fascinating personally. But he said, what I find with him is, I think he's playing a role, a character, but he says what we're thinking, but he says it in the more controversial way. Yeah. So instead of...
For shock value.
Yeah, instead of saying that men are stronger than women, he says that women are weak, for example. So he does these controversial...
Which is not the language
we would choose. But ultimately... But the point is, and he said something, he said, men only enter into situations deliberately where their status is going to be increased.
Wow.
And if their status is not increased, then they're not going to make a conscious decision to go into that situation.
Interesting.
And he said that's with their friendships, that's with the car that they're going to drive, it's the job that they're going to do, it's where they're going to live, and it's the partner that they're going to choose. Mm-hmm. And I kind of was like, no, that's not true. And I actually sat back and I was like, fudge, he's actually quite correct. There are many situations, and I'm not going to say across the board, but even when I look at, when I get a nice watch, my status is improved by the watch, right? If I get a nice haircut, my status is improved. And it's not necessarily your status, and I think there are a couple of ways to look at this. Your status can be improved from the need of validation from others.
I was going to say.
Right? Or the status is improved in terms of the value that we place in ourselves.
And how you feel.
And
then how you walk in the room as a result.
Exactly. And there's a shadow side to the shadow side, but ultimately, when I sat with it and I looked at the caliber of woman that I tend to be interested in beyond any period of time is a woman who I'm going to be proud to say that that's my woman. Yeah. Right? I've got a lot of sisters, right? A lot of women in my family. I grew up in a very, very powerful feminine household. Close cousins as well that grew up with us. It's like, I can't bring a bimbo tart into... My status is not
going to be improved. They'll eat her alive.
Not only that, my status is not going to be improved. Yeah. Ultimately, do I care if she gets eaten alive? No, I care about the fact that I still have to be in that family dynamic. Right. Where I've reduced my status.
And then they're judging you.
For example, I'm not going to be judging myself. Let's have it right. Yeah. And so even like, being here on Neckar, and, there's some beautiful couples here. And last year when I came for the first time, some wonderful couples. And it's like, I know that if Patrick was here, he'd have no qualms you being in any conversation, because the representation that you're going to have of him and of the relationship that you're in is going to be at the high standard.
Yes. And people are going to feel the quality of our connection.
Exactly. And also the quality of the person that we pick is also indicative of the quality of who we are as a person.
And how we hold ourselves.
And how we hold ourselves. Because we're going to pick relationships that meet us at the value that we hold of ourselves.
Yes.
And so, if you're going into a room with somebody who's not going to be representing how you choose to be represented as a person, regardless of them, are you going to do that? And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And then, there was another shadow side to it that sits on there. It's like, I like my selfies with my woman to bang. Right? The selfies have got a pop. And to be honest, on this journey of discovering what these things were, if you want to get into the weeds, you're going to have to face the shadows. And
you have to face your shadows.
You're going to have to face, and the fact is, it's like, if our selfies aren't going to pop, it's probably not going to go anywhere. But, there's been times when some relationships have lasted a bit longer than they were supposed to because the selfies popped even though nothing else did.
Well, that's the thing, and that's the
Which is where the other questions come in.
And ultimately, you're the kind of guy that's not enough for you. Like, there's other men that are fine with having
just a trophy person or whatever.
Right.
That doesn't work for me.
But that's not you because you have deeper values than that. So really the baseline of what you're talking about is alignment with your values.
Alignment with values. And to encapsulate, because again, this came from me looking at all these different pieces.
Yeah.
It's like, am I proud to walk into any room or space with this person as a representation of the value that I hold to myself because of the partnership I hold that close to myself?
Yeah.
So am I proud to call her my human?
Yeah.
So that's one of the questions. It's not my first question, but it's one I wanted to cover first because it's got
the most
layers to it.
And it's the most ripe for misunderstanding.
Yeah, it's the most ripe. Because someone did ask me, what does it mean to be proud? And I broke it down.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So they kind of got it.
Yeah. So what are the other three?
So the other question that came up, and this is one that, as an entrepreneur, I've been an entrepreneur most of my life. A lot of my time is spent solving problems. It's spent, juggling balls, spinning plates or whatever for me and for other people.
Yeah.
And when I'm not doing that, I want to be held in a space that's healing, that's nourishing, that lifts me up.
Yeah.
And I looked at different relationships that I've been in and ones that didn't work. And I look at, I was in a relationship with someone who I love very deeply for 6.5 years. I thought that we were going to get married and have kids, but ultimately she liked to put me down and beat me down.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Not all the time, but anytime I had something that I was happy or proud about, there was always, but, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't like direct. It was always kind of like a side snipe.
That can be exhausting.
And I didn't really sit until later. And, I would always love her. She had my back in the through the darkest times of my life. But ultimately, when I then look at situations moving forward, where I've been in somebody's space, and no matter what's happening outside, when I come into that space, I can forget it. I feel nourished. I feel topped up without pulling on them. And this is very key.
That's key.
So it's not just I come in as an energy vampire and suck to your good energy.
It's not like you're abdicating your responsibility for yourself.
No. Yeah. It's when we're in a space together, are we both elevated in our frequency and our vibration? Do we both feel better, more full, more nourished and more whole? Do we love the time that we spend in each other's energy physically and virtually? And so does she raise my vibe?
Yeah. Oh, great. I love that. Does she raise my vibe?
Yeah.
And the next?
The next one is, does she hold me to the high standards?
I love that. So what do you like about that?
Well, I think, again, as somebody that's out in the world doing a lot, it's very easy to take the easy road.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Even little things like, am I going to be able to get away with, like, not brushing my teeth? And this is a very silly one. No, this is a very silly one.
Dude, I mean.
But I'm just putting out a very basic one. As in, that's the level of standard keeping that I want. Someone that's not going to let me get away with saying, I'm going to skip my workout. But someone's going to, but no, babe, come on. These are your goals.
Yeah.
I believe in you. Come and do it.
Yeah. You said you want this.
Yeah, you want this.
Do the things that align with what you want.
So that lovingly push me in the right direction. Whether it's, pulling me aside and saying, hey, I'll give you an example. Olga pulled me up on something the other day. I did this meme on my stories. Because, Olga's the mother of my child.
Yeah.
And she hit me up and she's like, Daniel, have a look at this because I think there might be something sitting under this, a little bit of victim mentality sitting underneath this. Take a look at it and have a think about that and see if that's the kind of way that you want to be out in the world.
Wow.
And that is the kind of thing that I want, lovingly saying, hey, and again, in order for this to happen, you need to have someone that you can actually sit and hold your vision with.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But for me, that's a
given.
That's a given.
That's a given. They're going to know your vision.
They could know the vision.
Yeah.
But having someone that's going to support you in being at the standard that's going to hold your vision.
Yeah.
And going to hold it with you and make sure that you are on point and accountable in terms of what you need to do to go make that vision happen.
And then how does it same for their vision, I assume?
But this is the thing, because the last question is, does she hold herself to the highest?
Got it. Okay, great. Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, things like communication, common values, common decency, hygiene, sexual connection, those are basics.
Right. I mean, that has to be there.
And you can have that with someone that you meet in 5 minutes, right?
Oh, yeah.
But these are the ones that, you know, beyond you having a conversation with someone in a coffee shop or someone that you meet in a library somewhere, if you're going to be going deeper, these are the 4 things. Those other things are standard to it. But does she hold herself to the highest standard? Is she committed to self-growth?
Yes.
Is she committed to looking at her mindset? Is she committed to being open to me making observations to her also? So that she can be held to the highest
and
standard.
holding her to a standard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so those are my 4 questions.
So these are specifically 4 questions, I would say, for a growth-oriented relationship.
100%.
Like if your goal for relationship is simply comfort or to create a family, you know, if your vision isn't including some kind of larger vision.
And the thing is, and that's okay.
And that's great. If that's
what
what it is, these may not be the questions for you. But what I loved in our conversation and wanted you to unpack was exactly this. Like when you're a growth-oriented person who's here doing big stuff in the world, how do you pick someone who can really partner with you on that journey? And so these 4 questions, again, just to run them down quickly, are...
Am I proud to be in this relationship? You know, no matter what space I'm in. Is my vibe raised by this relationship and this connection?
Yeah.
Does this human hold me to the high standard?
Yeah.
And does this human hold themselves to the highest standard?
Yeah.
Too.
So good. Thanks for watching. And we're going to go back to playing on Necker for the last afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us here. It's been an incredible week.
Amazing.
What's been one of your favorite things about this week? So we're here with an amazing group of entrepreneurs in Richard Branson. And what have you loved about it?
I mean, the thing I love about Necker perhaps the most is the energy. And the other thing when I was speaking with Richard a couple of days ago, and again, I got to sit with him at lunch today, it's that growing up in the UK, we didn't have many heroes in terms of entrepreneurship. It was Sir Richard and Anita Roderick. Anyone else was kind of like, if you look at, I've probably been reading the Rich List in the UK since I was about 11 or 12 years old.
Whoa.
Yeah, every year. It comes out in April. And looking at who's on there and what they did, and because I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, been an entrepreneur. And he was always on the list as someone who, you almost felt like you would have a connection with him because he was always doing interviews. He had books. And,
he's so apprachable in a way.
Yeah, and he was out there. You know, everyone else, you know, kind of like, I've got my...
Yeah, I'm over here doing my thing.
Or whatever. But he was out there and, you know, he was releasing books and doing big things in the world. And that was one of the most powerful things, I think, having a hero that gave us not just the insight that we can be entrepreneurs, but the kind of entrepreneur. Caring about his customers, caring about his people, caring about world issues, caring about what he's bringing to the world, and also really being passionate about encouraging other people to do the same. Like, we do get the chance to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner with him. We do get the chance to... was in the hot tub with him yesterday.
Right.
Last year, got to have a lot of one-on-one time with him on hikes, and we were playing chess and so on. And it's just a magical place with a magical human that really desires to create more magic in the world. I think that's...
and really lives. You know, it's quite similar. I mean, and also other people in the group, I feel that way about too.
Group, yeah.
It's an incredible group of people. And I think the thing I keep coming back to that I guess I'm not really that surprised to have discovered it, but to feel it firsthand is the depth of his curiosity and interest in people.
Yeah. 100%.
Because someone, you know, at that level could, like you said, could just be over here counting his beans and not dealing with people at all and be completely sheltered from life. But he's a person that gets out and lives. He cares about the community here.
And remembers conversations.
He remembers conversations you've had with him days later.
Yeah.
And it's that level of interest in people and having people feel seen in my presence that I aim for. So to experience someone like him doing that at that level, it just feels so good.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, like last year, on day 1, we had a hike, and I ended up getting a big chunk of the hike with him, and he was like, you know, what do you do? Blah, blah, blah. And he came to me days later. He's like, you said you've got some books. Do you have any with you? I said, yeah. He said, can I have one?
Wow.
I said, yeah, fine. And then I brought it and said, could you sign it for me?
Wow.
I was like, okay. And then when we were talking yesterday in the hot tub, I was like, so Richard, what are you excited about at the moment? And he was talking about what's going on. And then he said, well, what are you excited about at the moment? What are you working on? I was like, this guy's running multiple billion-dollar businesses, got hundreds of other companies, staff, life, children, grandchildren, and still took the time out to ask what I was passionate about and actually reflect back on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So thank you so much for watching. This has been 4 questions to have a great relationship, to sort of orienting questions to relationship. And until next time, remember that a great relationship starts with you.